then that mental sort of way of thinking really give us some kind of will. I will, my life is something meaningful, something useful. That kind of thinking gives you inner strength. So now healthy mind very much depends on this mental level self-confidence. For that self-confidence with sufficient reason, ultimately peace of mind. And also, your life, as we are social animal, you are one of the member of the social animal. So, by birth, the taking care of each other. That's very nature, human nature. So your life, always, helping other. And then, you get the feeling, my life, really meaningful life as a social animal. Just extreme way selfish thinking is actually against social animal sort of thinking. Social animal, by nature, take care your group. Just oneself, always think oneself, is actually impractical like that. So therefore, I always talk people. Firstly, we need some sense of oneness of 7 billion human beings. On this planet, we have to live together. And individuals' future depends on them. One individual, one of the 7 billion human beings, or say the group, like that. So that, or say, on that level, is too much self-centered thinking, selfish. It's actually against that nature. So extreme, selfish way is actually destroying your own happy life. Look, children, at young age, they don't care what color, what races, what nationality, what religion. So long we play together, and then, there is a real sense of community there. I feel once we join school, then not much talking oneness of human being, but rather different country, different religion, different color. And then also, within same religion, same sort of color, but then the rich and poor. There are too many ways how to say distinction, differences.
Discrimination. No, discrimination.
Oh, discrimination. So I feel now today's world, we, as I mentioned earlier, at the beginning, young age, there is sort of feeling of oneness. Then gradually join school. Then too much emphasis about these differences. Then develop the oneness of human brothers, sisters is diminishing. Rather, my nation, my country, or my race, like that. So therefore, education is very, very important. Then the entire sort of world education, difficult to say. But like Harvard University, one famous university, you see, should carry some of these principles. Then show also the other universities like that. Harvard University, very, very famous. So I'm very happy to have this sort of opportunity to talk. Then now here some students, some students or some younger professors. So I would like to take questions and not.
Your Holiness, our students will ask questions in just a minute. They're
Okay.
ready with a number of good questions.
Okay, so I would like to have a more complicated question.
Okay, a more complicated question, Your Holiness.
So that is help me fully utilize my brain. If question is just a silly question, then my brain sleep.
Okay, no silly questions. Your Holiness, I want to ask you about leadership and happiness. You have met leaders from all over the world, and you've given them a lot of advice. They have a lot of money and a lot of power, but many leaders are not happy people. So this is a hard question, I think. Why are so many leaders unhappy people?
I feel very much so depend our education system. Then leadership, also human brothers, sisters. Basically same. We are the member of social animal. Now, as I already mentioned, you see, through education, we emphasize sense of oneness of 7 billion human beings. We are social animal. So that I feel our education not much sort of emphasis on that level. So then, and then also, basically, we really need sense of oneness of human being, and you see, emphasis my nation, my religion, their religion. These are secondary level. So basically, we are same human being. We have to live on this planet together, whether Easterner, Westerner, Southerner, Northerner. You see, we all share the same planet, same world. And then today's reality, the economy, and also now climate situation. You see, there is no sort of way to make distinction, our nation, their nation. We entire world, we have to live together, and the economy also, global economy, then the environment. Now we all share, for example, global warming, we all share same way. So now, unlike, I think, past century, you see, we can just emphasize my nation, my continent. Now time goes, you see, no longer say that. We should say we world, we human being on this planet. And now they, as I mentioned earlier, they, because of global warming problem, we simply, you see, have to think we rather than just my nation like that. So now today, this intelligence, human intelligence, now think for wider way, not just my nation, my people, but think about humanity. Because we have to live together, and we all facing same problem, economy problem, then the ecology problem, these things. So I emphasizing importance of concept of oneness of 7 billion human beings. We have to think entire humanity, entire world.
Thank you, Your Holiness. When you meet a leader who's an unhappy person, what advice do you give that person? What advice do you give an unhappy leader so that the leader can be a happier person?
That's a difficult question. I think some leaders, I think difficulties, I think their own creation. I say in my lifetime, I met a number of leaders, including religious leaders or political leaders. You see, most cases, those leaders more open mind, more liberal, it seems more happier. There's too much also the thinking oneself, as I mentioned earlier. You see, so now, and again now, the leaders come from society. And the leaders also, you see, through our existing school. So now, education system. I think a key factor, we should pay more attention about education, how to educate human brothers, sisters, more also wiser and more, how to say, open-minded, like that. So this system, whole education, as such, the people, entire community, from that kind of education, then certain sort of thinking, more narrow-minded thinking. Then leaders come from that society, same. So we can't sort of blame each those individuals. I think whole system, I feel, I always talking, our education system must be more compassionate, think humanity rather than my nation like that. So I hope Harvard University, you see, more research work, how to develop education system, which eventually bring more wiser sort of student. So that's very important. And then leadership come from that kind of education, automatically more wiser. like that. That's my view.
Our students here today are the next generation of leaders that want to lift up the world and to bring compassion to people, just like you say, which is why this is so important. One of the things that we find is that even though we're all surrounded by people all the time, you one time said, we feel lonely when we're not alone. A lot of people feel very lonely today. Why do so many people feel lonely, and what can we do to help them?
Lonely.
No.
Oh, I think that's your own sort of way of thinking. Otherwise, now telephone and television. So, through telephone, you see, we can reach everywhere. In ancient time, of course, for example, when we Tibetan inside Tibet, then India very far. After now we come India and open society, and then from here, you see, telephone everywhere. So I think with the technology, I think the oneness of human world now become much more clear. So I think now with the technology, very, very helpful, you see, to communicate each other very easily. Meantime, ultimately depend on one individual mind and attitude like that. So I think, for example, like Tibet, in ancient time, in nomad, they are really lonely. One family, two families like that. Now today, you see the big cities, millions of people live together. So their way of life is very much dependent on the rest of the community. But mentally, those Tibetans who remain lonely, but mentally happy, and sense of also the group very clear. So they one family feel next family, if I need some help, I can ask. The very strong sense of one community. Without that, big cities, then next to your room, people there, but you do not know. And instead of trust, fear, distrust, like that. So these, I think, the individual mental sort of way of thinking, and the society, more compassionate society, then sense of community easily come. Not much sort of talking about compassion, just selfish, then lonely feeling.
Do you believe, Your Holiness, that to be less lonely, that one should be more compassionate toward others? In other words, if I bring happiness to other people, will I become a happier person myself?
거사, so I remember, I think the New York business family, Pritzker, right? Chicago, Pritzker. You see, one time, you see, of course, several times we met, and one time, you see, we met, you see, they take some group of Tibetan refugees, settle in their area. And then the reason they told me, Tibetan community, usually, you see, very friendly and very strong sense of same community and more compassionate attitude. So he very much impressed that kind of attitude, you see, should spread in America. So that's the main reason he told me. He took some, I think, few hundred Tibetan settler and near his place. So usually, wherever you see Tibetan live, you see people also notice more harmony, more compassionate. But except a few cases, otherwise, you see, very peaceful, like that. So therefore, now in big city, several millions, but mentally lonely. Like you see some area, you see people, very few, but not having a lonely feeling. Okay.
Your Holiness, what's the biggest mistake that leaders make? What's the biggest mistake for happiness that leaders make when they're leaders of nations or they're leaders of companies? What is the mistake that you see leaders making all the time that you could, if you could correct it, that you would?
I think they think same community. I think the European Union's leader, you see, since they create union, particularly like France, French, and Germany, in First World War, Second World War, arch enemy. But then after Second World War, under the leadership of Adenauer and de Gaulle, you see, they they create union of Europe. So those leaders in European Union, see, I think they automatically in their mind, when they use the word we, immediately European Union. Now England so far a little complicated. So you see more sort of what's the sense of community, then mentally also more peace and the sense of we and much stronger. Like that. So eventually, I think like European Union eventually should create in Latin America and Africa. So eventually, I think the whole world should have one union of human brothers, sisters. I feel like that. I cannot see my lifetime, but hoping so those younger generation, it is your responsibility. Think more serious and make some effort.
Your Holiness, let's talk to some of our students now. Let's move to some of our students who are the leaders that will bring our world together. These are some of the most talented and gifted young people I've ever met, who will be leading companies and countries with these ideas of sisterhood and brotherhood. And so we're going to start now with some of our students who prepared questions for you. And I want to start with Brian Hollins. So Brian, please introduce yourself and say where you're from and give His Holiness your question now. Brian Hollins.
Thank you for being here, Your Holiness. My name is Brian Hollins, and I'm from Washington, D.C. in the United States. My question is about human connection during the pandemic. Over the past year, I would imagine you have been forced to use Zoom, which limits your ability to touch and help people feel spiritually lifted. What is your advice to people who are struggling to stay connected to others as well as to their houses of worship?
I think better to ask the concerned people, doctors and specialists and nurses, if this kind of gathering can save, then no problem. If they give some warning, then even religious gathering, be careful, like that. So now, this horse the kasa.
The pandemic.
Epidemic. This for me, this gives me solitude meditation. So I think some people, this you see, avoid meeting, or that is good for their own meditation or practice, like that. So that's, I think, depend on. Now I think should because of the should go according the concerned doctors, scientists, and concerned of people. I feel like that. Okay.
Thank you, Your Holiness. Our next question is from Elise Propus. Elise.
Thank you for the opportunity, Your Holiness. My name is Elise Propus, and I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, in the United States. My question for you is about polarization and technology, which you referenced earlier. In today's world of increased polarization fueled by social media, how can our generation leverage technology as a tool to discover harmony, compassion, and respect for differences?
Of course, as a technology ultimately depend how to use technology by human being. Even you, as the kept several sort of also the nuclear bomb, but now at least in the last few decades, no one touched that. Even using now thinking, reduce, eliminate nuclear weapon. So, you see the technology, whether sort of also the create a problem or not, ultimately user of human being, human mind, more sense of one community, 7 billion human beings, one community, and live one planet. And then, you see, these also the technological sort of also these weapons, these, you see, itself no longer sort of move. Everything depends by human mind. So ultimately depend human inner value. And you see, sort of concept oneness of 7 billion human beings, not distinction, Easterner, Westerner, Northerner, Southerner, and also not distinction on the basis of religion, but rather oneness human being. The way born, the way die, entire 7 billion beings, same. And while we live, basically, we have to live together on this same planet. Okay. Yes, next question.
Thank you, Your Holiness. Our next question comes from Raul Chawla. Raul.
Thank you for being here, Your Holiness. I am Rahul Chawla, and I am from India. My question is whether happiness is really under our control. Most people around me who are happy seem to not be trying very hard to be like that. Can studying happiness help us achieve it as leaders, or must it just come naturally?
I think happiness is the basis of our survival. As soon as we're born, our mother give us some sense of security, and most important is mother provide us compassion. As soon as we're born, with mother's milk, and the children with other children play together, so always smiling each other. That's the basis of human life. I always feel after we join school, then we emphasize secondary level of differences. Not much pay attention about basic oneness of human brothers, sisters. This is my feeling. So, again, education. Before education, we already have sense of one community. Then in the education, we emphasize differences, nations or races, these are secondary. But basically, we are same human being. We have to live together on this planet. So if we emphasize more on that, I think one small example, myself, I always talk as a oneness of 7 billion human beings. So myself believe that. So whenever I go different places, I feel, human place, human brothers, sisters. You see, no sort of differences or feeling of distance. So really depend on our mental level attitude. So leaders also, you see, from that kind of sort of education, that kind of society, and then naturally, you see, different way, rather than just lonely training. I think ancient time, kings or queens, these are, I really feel, outdated. Democratic system, much better. So sometimes I feel really Dalai Lama also have that kind of sort of feeling, something isolate. So the leaders, queens, and you see the kings or queens also, you see they from childhood they live in the palace, so a little bit sort of isolate. So now that already gone. We really enjoy democracy. So I myself, you see, last few centuries, Dalai Lama as a head, but I retired. Now our leader should be elected leader, not the religious name or some other thing. or some the leader. They're gone. About 10 years, I completely retired from regarding Tibet, the political responsibility. I completely retired. Like that.
Thank you, Your Holiness. And one thing I'd like to emphasize for our whole audience from this is the non-attachment of great leadership that His Holiness showed by stepping back as the political leader of the Tibetan people voluntarily. There are so few leaders in our world that step back voluntarily from power, and yet non-attachment is something that leaders should be able to demonstrate as well. And His Holiness has demonstrated non-attachment to His own political power, and we should be able to emphasize that in our own leadership journey as well. Thank you for that, Your Holiness. Our next question comes from Annie Plekta. Annie.
Thank you for being with us tonight, Your Holiness. My name is Annie Plekta, and I'm from Duluth, Minnesota in the United States. My question is, as a leader, how do you recommend we prevent feelings of disappointment and frustration over events and actions you cannot control from negatively impacting your mental health?
Here, one Indian scholar, ancient Indian scholar, his advice very practical. Now, so you see, he mentioned when we face some problem, analyze the problem. Problem not come independently due to many causes and conditions. So analyze, study. Then, if you find there is a way to overcome the problem, then no need, also the fear, full self-confidence, work hard. If the problem beyond our control, beyond our individual control, then no use too much fear. If there's a way to overcome, full confidence and work hard. If the problem beyond our control, then not much use to worry. Like that. That's practical.
It's very good advice, isn't it? All of us are going through our lives with all trying to control the things that we can't control. Just to let go of the things that we can't control will give us so much more time to do what we should be doing, which is to be thinking about all the other people in the world and the way that we can be helping them instead of thinking about ourselves. Thank you for that, Annie. Our next question, Sivan Gompers.
Your Holiness, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with all of us students today. My name is Sivan Gompers, and I'm from Boston, Massachusetts in the United States. My question for you is, how can we find our inspiration and true purpose? And related to this, how can we as leaders help other people find theirs?
I think ultimately your life, whether successful life or difficult life, entirely depend on yourself. You see, one ancient sort of Indian sort of tradition say, even if the Buddha say, oneself is master of oneself. So therefore, the self-confidence, and for that, knowledge, very important. Without knowing much and a foolish self-confidence, it is dangerous. To study and look holistic way, then also I think here faith not much sort of helpful. Analyze. We call analytical meditation. So with help of modern education and the information, and then through analyze, through investigation, once you reach full confidence, I think that's and confidence related with the brain, and then warm-heartedness, here, compassion. Now these combine, then you can be positive individual who fully confidence yourself. Meantime, you see, ability to analyze and things not depend on faith, but analyze, including scientific research. That's, I think, the best way to develop full confidence. And then, meantime, helping other people. Okay, now this is fifth way.
那这种东西就前面所讲的讨论，生活。
所有这些，这是。